digging up the best in archaeology from around the UK. This is the Tales from the Trowel podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Trowel. Today, Darren and I are out on location in Teesdale. We are at Gueswick. Beautiful surroundings, absolutely gorgeous, horrific weather on its way in. As usual, we come outside to do some outside recording, thinking we're going to have a nice summer's day. It's going to be lovely, full of rain, high winds, and generally off. But in saying that, the archaeology is fantastic. Darren and I are going to have a wander around now and have a look at some of the trenches, find out what's been going on, talk to some of the volunteer archaeologists here with Altogether Archaeology.
So we have Rob Young.
Yeah.
So Rob, you're the professional lead.
That's apparently the title they've given me, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that come with any extra responsibilities?
Well, Martin, who's brilliant at doing these sort of jobs, Martin Green actually writes the reports, but I just sort of, make sure that we take things out in the right sequence and hopefully record them right, so he can actually use that data to write the report.
Brilliant. And sequencing, I'm realising in archaeology, it's the be all and end all, isn't it? Everything really has to be sequential, doesn't it?
It's like peeling an onion. The earliest layers are on the top, and as you peel the skin off, you go down through the onion and you get to the latest layers in the middle. So digging the sites just like that. It's taking the layers and the context out in the right order.
Well, that's quite a simplistic view, because I thought that's what it is. But you've got cuts.
Oh yeah,
there'd be a cut into a different layer, and then you have a cut where there's been a structure built against the cut, and there's a lot.
Well, that's just that. A lot of that is observation that comes sort of with experience,
right?
And once you've done 2 or 3 excavations, you get your eye in for what's cutting what and what's overlying. The most basic relationships in any archaeological excavation are, if you've got a layer, what's above it, what's below it, is anything cutting through it?
Right.
And if you can get those relationships right, you can actually sort of tell the story of how the site developed.
Right.
And once you can do that, then you can put all the finds into the different contexts and the layers that they've come from, and you can work out a chronological sequence to go with that relative sequence, where event A is followed by event B, is followed by event C. You can put all the artifacts into that relative sequence, and that's what gives you the chronology. And then that's really, really enhanced, really enhanced by radiocarbon data. And they give you, well, I was going to say absolute dates, but they're not. Technically they're called chronometric dates with real years added. Right. And that's when it gets really interesting, is when you get radiocarbon dates. But carbon dates are kind of still expensive to get, a couple of £100 to get radiocarbon dates. So you have to be dead careful, what context you take samples from to date. And we've got a really good sequence of radiocarbon dates from this site that shows at least the excavational sequence we're doing is correct, because the dates follow the sequence, which is nice.
Right. Archaeology, is it nature or nurture? Can you learn archaeology?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Because, so you've gone through university and all that, but you're not an archaeologist. You know the theories, you know the basics.
Yeah.
But like you say, you have to spend time studying layers and things. But from my point of view, the digs I've been involved with, now the archaeologists say there, can you see where there's a change, there's a brown or there's a slight green, and I don't always see it.
So that's just experience, just getting your eye in. Like textures as well. Soils have textures, and it's just being able to sort of feel those texture changes.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of different sorts of archaeology. You don't have to just dig holes to be an archaeologist. You could do research on finds, like Tony's really good. Tony Metcalf's really good on the find side of things. When I'm not digging holes, I do reports on flint and pottery from other people's excavations.
Yeah.
To be an archaeologist, there's lots of different branches of the study. There's people who specialise in studying animal bones, to talk about past diets. They look at plant remains, to talk again about what the environment was like when people were around, say, in the Iron Age. There's tremendous amount of information you can get. And you can be an archaeologist and just listen to what the professionals in inverted commas have to tell you, and be kind of entertained by that and get your knowledge from that. So, but much more interesting, I always used to argue this when I worked in university, is to turn what you could say were passive consumers, the folks who went to lectures and were really interested and listened to what the professionals had to say, turn those folks into active producers of their own archaeology. That's crucial, I think. If you're doing that, then you're on a roll. And this organisation now, Altogether Archaeology, has done that successfully over the last, 10, 15 years and more. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Do you get pigeonholed. Like Tony, you say Tony's good at finds, where someone might be good at another aspect, or someone's good at bones.
Sometimes you have a specialism, yeah.
Yeah, but isn't that surely a complete archaeologist is be across all the disciplines?
You've got a finger on the pulse, as it were. Yeah. Nobody can hope to, to know it all, really.
Yeah.
I mean, my specialism is prehistory. I mean, I'm digging on a site that's Iron Age. All right, that's good. But Romans, I was really interested in Romans when I was a student. But I was taught by people who were really, really fired up by prehistory, the period before the development of writing. And that just fired me to get involved, really. And I've never looked back.
Is there periods that you think, no, not for me? Any period, if there was a site and it was from a certain period, would you say, I haven't got the interest?
No, I wouldn't, no. Because genuinely, you have to be interested. You have to have that inquiry kind of, it's inbred, really.
Yeah.
You don't want to know what happens, yeah. I mean, you might not have the knowledge that, say, a medieval specialist would have to tell you about medieval buildings and medieval settlements and medieval pottery, but you'd be interested to find out what they had to say, and that would stimulate you, I think, to think about how, an interpretation might develop and how you could get involved in a debate with the experts about what's actually going on the site.
So that's about another organisation. Kind of an organisation that probably brought archaeology to the masses was Time Team.
Yeah.
Now, you're getting Time Team. The reason I asked the question about areas where you mightn't have a massive interest in, I think Mick Aston, he wasn't that interested in Roman. Am I right in believing?
Well, I don't know really. I mean, Mick Aston was a great field archaeologist. His real interest was landscapes, and he ran a lot of really good projects. From the time when he was a county archaeologist right through to when he was involved with the Time Team. After technically, I think he probably was meant to have been retired, but he was such a good archaeologist and so enthusiastic. He had an interest in everything, and that's why the Time Team was such a good program.
Yeah.
Because the work was done in 3 days. I know, because when I worked for English Heritage, I had to go and look after, I think 3 or 4 sites they were digging on to see that, the job was done right. And the work was done within 3 days.
And was it done right?
Yes, always. Yeah, it was, meticulous, fast. Done fast.
Exactly, because I only watched the Binchester Time Team the other night. I think I've watched about 9 days this week, so I keep falling asleep.
Yeah.
On a night. I put it on and it just relaxes me. Yeah, they go in and I know they use mechanical diggers, but in no time at all, they're quite far down.
Yeah.
And I think, God, I've been at Auckland Castle last week and we had a scraper and a pick or a mattock and we didn't get down 6 inches. So in no time at all, they're quite down.
They used to have a set of, there were research questions they wanted answers to, and they devised techniques to actually realise the answers to those research questions in a limited period of time. And that was what made it so exciting, was that, here we've got 3 days to do X, and sometimes they did it in 3 days, sometimes they did it and it wasn't quite what they wanted to, to realise. But the professionalism was amazing, and I always thought it was incredible given the timescales. Mick Aston was a genius. Yeah, Stuart Ainsworth, who used to do all the landscape work. I worked with him when he worked for English Heritage at Historic England.
Yeah.
Phil Harding is another one. He's such a great communicator, a really, really good field archaeologist, works for Wessex. And they were all really talented people who all came together at a time when there was a burgeoning interest in archaeology. And there's that old film, I can't remember who's in it, but it's called Field of Dreams, where the guy wants to be a baseball player.
Yeah.
And he builds a baseball diamond, and all the ghosts of all the players he wanted to play with turn up. If you build it, they will come. Once there's a mechanism there and a structure there, then folks will get involved if they're interested.
Yeah.
But it's getting that interest. And as I say, turning consumers of professional knowledge into producers of their own archaeology is a crucial thing to be doing through a community project like this one. And it works.
One of the members of the Time Team he's involved with Altogether. Is it
Stuart Ainsworth?
Stuart,
Stuart, yeah.
And that was the chap who did the magnetometry and all the...
No, that was Vince Gaffney.
Oh, right.
Stuart was the landscape archaeologist.
Yes, because he was the one that reconstructed Binchester and he said it all slipped away.
Yeah, he used to do all the flying around in the helicopter.
So how did you get in? How did you start with archaeology?
How did I start with archaeology?
Because obviously, I'm not being thinking, but Time Team probably wasn't the reason you got into archaeology.
No. I mean, I'm ancient.
Well, you're not,
I went on my first archaeological excavation in 1965.
Right.
1965. I was
You're ancient, aren't you, really?
I am ancient,
I'm
yeah.
joking.
I was 11. And it was at Binchester. And it was with the Bishop Auckland Archaeological Research Group. And it was when they were clearing out the bathhouse, before the bathhouse had the shed put over it, and before they developed it. And I got into it because my teacher at school, I went to the grammar school when it was a grammar school at Bishop Auckland, and I did Latin right through to A level from, the first year I went in. And Mrs. Wanless, who taught Latin, said, anybody want to come to see an archaeological excavation, meet up Saturday in the Market Square at Bishop, and we'll go to the Binchester excavations. And I went, and I never looked back. And I was bitten by the bug, and I had no plan B. I always wanted to be an archaeologist after that. My dad always said to me, Robert, when you get a real job, you'll know what work's about, because he knew I would have done it for nothing.
Yeah.
I just loved it, and I've been all over the world with it. I've worked in some amazing places, met some incredible people, and it's just been a blast. I can honestly say I've never had a boring day. Genuinely, I've never had a boring day.
Wow.
I've had days when I've been dead on my feet and I've had enough, but I've never been bored.
I wonder how many people can say that.
It's true. I've never been bored.
So a question I've asked everybody,
go on, then.
and the listenership is probably going to go, oh, we know what's going on. Right. Time machine, you're going to go back to a period in time.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
I would go back to a period called the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age, and which is what I'm really interested in. It's the period just before farming starts, when people were still hunting and gathering, still making a living by, gathering fruits from the forest and by hunting animals in the forested environment. Mm. And the crucial thing I'd want to know about is, why give a lifestyle up where you were part of the landscape and you could predict where all your resources were going to be on stream and on tap at different times of the year, and where people had structured patterns of movement through that landscape and knew it. They were part of it. They didn't own it. They were part of it. Why give that balanced way of making a living up to become a farmer where you cut trees down, you destroy the ecosystem, because the ecosystem never goes back to like it was. You couldn't go back to hunting and gathering once you committed to farming, and become reliant on what in nature are just wild grasses. That's all crops are. Yeah. Wild grasses that have been tamed, as it were, and animals that have been tamed. When you had a rich supply of tremendous animals like red deer, roe deer, wild boar, wild cattle, all there in the forest to be hunted and gathered. Why give all that rich dietary variety up to restrict your diet to agricultural food? And there must be some really social big issues there, and there must be some really big economic issues there. And I'd love to go back to that period of the transition from hunting and gathering to farming and try and find out.
Aye, you've given that some thought.
Mm.
Yeah, that never would have occurred to me. Never. Yeah. So
it's one of the most momentous periods, the Mesolithic.
Yeah.
Because at one level, right at the start of the Mesolithic, say about 10,000 BC, something like that, we'll say for the sake of an argument, you've got the end of the Ice Age, and people are adapting to changing landscape conditions as the ice retreats, right? And at the other end of the timescale, you've got this big momentous change with the development of agriculture. And around about 7,000 BC, Britain gets cut off from the continent, and the North Sea breaks through and the Channel gets formed, and Britain becomes an island. So there's all these changes that go on. Just at that point, there's a cusp, that people are sitting on at that Mesolithic, Neolithic transition. And I'd love to go back to see just how that panned out. Yeah.
That sounds certainly brilliant. Wow. And I'd never occurred to me any of that. But one last question.
Go on.
On this site we're on now, what's the one thing that surprised you?
Well, several things have surprised me. The commitment of the folks who've been doing the digging is amazing. Yeah. But the fact that you walk over it, it's a totally unprepossessing field, right? But you do the geophysical survey, like the time team used to do geophysics. The geophysics shows that there's a tremendously rich archaeological record under the turf, right? And it's complicated, and it's really interesting. And trying to unravel that is I think really, really difficult and challenging to do. And that's been great, trying to do that. And people say, well, you didn't find very much. Well, you find the site. The site's the find. Mm. And what that site tells you about the way people were making a living in the Iron Age and in the Roman period, that's the crucial sort of area of interest, really. The actual material culture finds, the bits of pot and, the metalwork and that, you need that to establish the chronology, and you need that to talk about the way people, utilise ceramics for certain jobs or metal for certain jobs. And it becomes very interesting once you start to do that, because up here, right, we've got a sequence of settlement activity that goes from the Middle Iron Age, say around about, 200, 250 BC, through to the 2nd, 3rd century in the Roman period, right? And whether it's continued use, you don't know. But at some point, these, what were probably well-to-do farmers in the Iron Age, right, were Romanized, for want of a better term, in inverted commas. They met with the Romans. They knew about probably through contact with the Roman army, and that changed their whole outlook on trade and exchange. And what, for me, is really interesting is that you go from a farmstead where people were, living an Iron Age way of life, probably cooking lots of stews, eating beans and pulses and lentils and that kind of thing, to a period once they were in contact with Romans for trade, where they bought into a totally different way of preparing food. And you can see that in some of the pottery we've got. There are these things called mortaria that are chafing dishes. Like, if you imagine a box grater for grating your food up, it's a chafing dish for making your vegetables into sort of mush, really, sort of to cook them differently. Mush is too strong a word, but you wouldn't have those things if the people who lived on the site didn't know how to use them. So there's a change in the way people view culinary activity, and that's kind of an interesting question. What promoted that?
Yeah.
And how did that link with the Romans actually manifest itself? Well, we know it manifests itself with the stone slab floors in the buildings, with querns that were, of a Romanized type, pottery that's Romanized. So there's a really interesting set of changes that goes on at that period around, 50 AD, when the Romans first really come into the region.
Well, that's fun. Might I suggest that people's dedication on the site, which is the first thing you alluded to, you might be down to your enthusiasm as well. I think that's got to rub off on people.
They're all committed. They're very, very good.
Well, I want to go up there and dig now. I've got my jeans on. But Rob, honestly, that's been brilliant.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. It's been good.
And two things I didn't expect out of that. I didn't expect to think about the Mesolithic in that manner.
Right.
And I didn't expect to write Kevin Costner down here, and I can't remember why I wrote that.
Is that
Field of
Dreams. That's right.
Rob, brilliant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's great fun.
This is Tales from the Trowel.
Okay, so we've been lucky enough to have a quick chat with Martin Green, who is
I'm the coordinator for fieldwork for Altogether Archaeology.
Okay.
So it's me that kind of arranges the portaloos and makes sure the tents get here and all the equipment. And I generally do the main writing up of the digs as well after the dig's finish. So I kind of make sure all the stuff goes off to the right labs for processing, and then write up the results so we can get out an interim report on the dig each year before the next dig starts.
But you've got quite an extensive knowledge of archaeology and history.
Yeah, I was, although was never a professional archaeologist. In my youth, I did actually work as a digger and supervisor for an archaeology unit in the 1970s until I went off and did other things. So I've got many years background in archaeology. And also, I think writing the digs up makes you kind of understand more deeply what's going on, because you have to try and get it right in your own mind before you start writing it for other people.
Of course. So do you have experience in writing texts, and is this something that's come across in your career?
Well, I've got a doctorate, but not in archaeology. So, I've written theses, written papers on other things. So it's something that comes fairly natural to me.
The importance of the written word is not lost on you.
Yeah, and record keeping, because in archaeology, it's never easy to keep a kind of track of the dig. Basically, when you're up on top of a hill and the rain's coming down like it is now, and the wind's whizzing across as it is at the moment, it's quite difficult to try and keep decent records and make sure you've got all the photographs and it all makes sense.
It's with doing that and being as involved as you are, does that lead to extra pressures? Is it you wake up on a morning and it's really blustery, it's really raining, and you think, I really can't not go. I have to go today.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite exhausting. I think we've had a couple of days off during the 3 weeks of this dig, but that's the only 2 days I'll have off. Of course, it's not as physically demanding, because although I spend some time digging, quite a lot of the time is kind of supervising and keeping the records straight. So it's less physically demanding than a lot of the volunteers who will be digging all day.
How long have you been involved with Altogether?
Well, right from the very beginning. It started in 2011 when it was a part of the Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty in the North Pennines project of that. And I was just a volunteer at that stage. But then in 2015, when the money ran out from the Heritage Lottery Fund, we reorganised as a community group And I've been one of the main ones on the committee ever since then, just as Tony has, helping to run the group. But as I said, my particular part of it is to organise the digs and make sure they run okay and get written up at the end. Other people do other things like organising the meetings and the insurance and all the other bits. But it's me that does the portfolio and so on.
So do you live locally?
Yeah, I live about half an hour's drive north of here near Blanchland. So I do live in the North Pennines. And one of the problems of the organisation just is that we cover a very large area. And in winter, it can be virtually impossible to get around the area because it's split up between the dales with high mountain passes in between them. It means as an organisation, we don't run like most community archaeology groups and have evening meetings where people come and hear speakers, because the distances that people would travel just be not worth it for an hour-long talk by somebody. So we tend to have whole days of a series of talks several times during the winter, rather than kind of separate evening meetings. And the same for digs. We try and organise digs in different parts of the North Pennines so that people, if they live locally, can at least get to something near to them. Unfortunately, a lot of our digs have tended to be in the Teesdale area just because of the opportunities we've had here. Teesdale is a wonderful area archaeologically and not very well investigated, so there's a lot to do here.
It's your accent suggests that you're not originally from Blanchland, is that?
No, I'm actually come from Cambridgeshire, so I come from down south. I originally came up to the northeast to work in the university in the late 70s, I think. Yeah, so I've been around here for about 40 years or so. But I'm married to a local, so she translates when necessary.
I'm sure it's never necessary. So where we are now in Gueswick, and this is an important site. Is it a site that was known to be important, or have you revealed its importance?
No, it's curious. It's a site that really wasn't known at all until about 8 years ago. The only thing that was known about it was that on top of the hill is a cairn, a very much mutilated cairn, because it's been robbed for wall building, presumably other things. And in the cairn and near to it were a couple of stones with cup marks in. And on the ground, about 10 metres from the cairn, is a ground-fast boulder with cup marks on. And these were noted by Paul Brown, who's was the expert in cup and ring marks and rock art in this area. So he noted it, published it in a book, and got it onto the County Historic Environment Record as being a Bronze Age cairn because of the rock art. But it wasn't investigated any further. It was only about 8 or 9 years ago that it was noticed that the top of the plateau here is actually quite lumpy, but not lumpy in a very obvious way that you can define at all. It doesn't look like an obvious prehistoric site or medieval site. It's just lumpy. It was picked up in the community LiDAR survey. Paul Frodsham, about 5 years ago, ran a community-based survey of LiDAR images for Teesdale and Weardale. And this survey included, this site was noted in that, but they wasn't too sure what it was. So about 5 years ago, we started off with doing geophysics. Fortunately, the next archaeology group south, which is the Arkengarth, the Swale Arkengarthvale group, have got a magnetometer that they got as part of a Heritage Lottery funded project. So we snuggled up to them and asked if they might like to bring their magnetometer up to Gueswick. And we started doing surveys across the field. We've extended it a couple of times in later years. So we've now got a magnetometry survey of the whole of the top of the plateau, which completely to our surprise showed this large trench, a large ditch that runs round the plateau, enclosing quite a large area, about a hectare or so. You can't see it on the ground. You can't even see it on the LiDAR images, and it doesn't appear as a crop mark. So it wasn't known it was there. And there were various other kind of ditches and other anomalies as well in the scan. So it was obvious that this was some kind of site, probably a prehistoric site. And this would fit in with the big terraces, because the south side of the hill facing towards Cotherston has got large terraces cut into it for, I presume, agricultural terraces. And these are some way from the local villages. The villages around here were all in the Domesday Book, so they're active and probably found in early medieval times. and they've got their own field systems around them. You can see on Google Earth, Cothston, Rommelkirk, Ponderthwaite have all got the typical reverse S hedge lines of medieval field systems around them. But the Gueswick Hills here aren't inside those field systems. So it seems unlikely that that the terraces were anything to do with the medieval farming. So it's probable that they're older. So the terraces kind of fit in with the fact that this is a prehistoric settlement on top.
So is there a reason why it was sited here? Was it because of the geography? Or
We know from the LiDAR survey that Paul did with volunteers, we know from that there are Iron Age type farmsteads. There's little enclosed settlements with a couple of round houses inside a bank. These are spread at about half-mile intervals up both sides of Teesdale. Generally, some of them are on the valley floor, but quite a lot of them are kind of halfway up the sides of the valley. In fact, there's one directly opposite the other side of the valley, directly opposite from Gueswick, that you can see from here. So it seems to be that they quite like their settlements to be fairly high. There is a fantastic views from here, further up the dale and across the moors, across to Shaughnessborough and Goldsborough, the big flat-topped mountains.
Well, obviously the two reservoirs that we close to here, they obviously were there.
No.
no less than 50 years ago. But you hear of when they flood the valleys, that they flood villages and things like that. That wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever, because now they control the water coming down there.
I think it would reduce the flooding of the rivers, yes. They're used as flood control as well as water supplies, those reservoirs.
But there's no suggestion this could have been dammed, this area here, because we're on a raised island. If it was dammed, it would be quite an effective defensive.
Yeah, no, I don't think in prehistoric times. I mean, as it happens, Gueswick Hills were actually a dam across Teesdale, but that was just at the end of the Ice Age. Gueswick Hills are terminal moraine of the glacier. So as the glacier gradually retreated up Teesdale at the end of the Ice Age, it left this huge ridge of debris across the dale. And according to the geographers, it dammed a huge lake. So the Gueswick Hills formed the dam of a huge lake that covered a lot of Teesdale. So Middleton and Rommelkirk would have all been deep underwater at the end of the Ice Age. But then the water broke through and formed where the Tees is now.
Yes.
And we landed up kind of several hundred foot above the Tees now.
Right. It's absolutely fascinating. But just when you referred to the Ark and Garthdale group, is there a local rivalry? I know there's a bit of a cross. You've got members in both groups. But there's no rivalry at all. There was when we set up the Altogether Archaeology for the North Pennines, there's no archaeology groups in the area at all. And there's a lot of people who are members of more than one group. I mean, I'm a member of the Tyndale group as well, which is the next group north that covers the kind of the Hadrian's Wall area and the area a bit to the north. And we've got people from the Loonsdale group who are part of us as well. So people who are keen on digging are often members of more than one local group. And it's useful to have their expertise as well. As I said, it's quite useful to be able to borrow their equipment when necessary as well. Some drone radar, super duper equipment. You're quite happy to loan it.
Oh yeah. No,
which is nice.
It's nice, and there's there's just so much archaeology to do around here.
Yeah.
Obviously, in areas like these upland areas, like the Yorkshire Dales and North Pennines, there's virtually no commercial archaeology like there would be in most of the country, simply because there isn't much in the way of development. There's no new roads, no railways, virtually no new housing being built. So there's no commercial archaeology being done on development sites.
I remember a metal detecting group, and we had a gentleman from the British Museum came to do a talk, and it was about Saxon settlements and how many Saxon settlements have been found through metal detecting. It's just because there is areas of the country that just don't get investigated.
Yep.
What's the one thing that surprised? Has anything surprised you, or is there some?
I think the fact that we started off believing it was kind of simple and that we'd dig it and we'd find the date of it, and we found a couple of round houses, and we know that it was 100 BC. But in archaeology, everything is always more complicated than you think it's going to be. So as it happens, turns out that this is a very long-running settlement, much longer running than we ever thought it would be. And we're now into deeper levels, so it may even go earlier than we've were suspecting last year. I mean, at the end of last year, when we got the dates back, we knew that it would have been an active settlement for over 500 years, because we got the ditch, the enclosure ditch around the Iron Age original enclosed settlement is about 250 BC, according to the radiocarbon dates. So we knew right through to the radiocarbon dates in the settlement that it was still active past 200 AD. So a very long-lived settlement. Of course, now we've actually gone below those levels, and we're still, we found this arc of post holes and a lot of charcoal and post and things. And these may well take it back hundreds of years before that. So it's just such a huge span of history this settlement covered. If you think about it in modern terms, that takes you back from the present day back into the medieval period, basically 500 years. You're back into the days of Henry VIII. So a huge span of history. Numerous events must have happened, which the biggest one, I guess, would have been the coming of the Romans.
Yeah.
But the settlement kind of carried on, probably prospered through the Roman period.
Yeah.
So it's just the great sweep of history that we're kind of exposing.
And this is your last week of 2024.
2024 is our last week. We've got about 5 days of digging, and then we'll have to get returfing.
Right. If the dig was to finish next weekend or the weekend coming, and that would be it, that would be a travesty, would it?
I won't say it's a travesty. The thing is, on a site like this, we got, or as I said, the ditch around the huge ditch around the top of the summit covers a hectare. And if you work out how long it would take to dig a hectare archaeologically, you're running into probably a century or two of digging. So you have to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And wherever you stop is always going to be a wrench. And but in the end, you've got to stop and write it up and publish it.
But there's definitely further years.
Oh, there's potential, yes, for further years of investigation here.
And can you know why? Because obviously the group has only got a finite amount of resources and people. Yeah. You wouldn't open that and get the Ark in Garthdale and the North Tyne.
Well, I mean, they're welcome. Anybody's welcome to join. Anybody who's a member, and it doesn't cost that much to join. Anybody can come along and dig with us. So,
do you do students? Do you use any students from Durham?
We have used our other summer dig down near Bowes, further south of here, which has been running in July for the last few years, is in cooperation with Durham University. The timing is always a problem because students expect to dig in July before they go off on their luxury holidays to wherever Durham students go.
Yeah.
Probably Malaya and things like that. I don't know what Durham students do during term time and so on. But cooperation with students is a possibility.
Enthusiastic folk, so they would work
some enthusiastic. But, students have to get, the ones that are going to carry on to become archaeologists as a career, have to get a lot of experience, because it's only by doing a lot of digging that you really get to know how it works and get the feel of sites. And the only way you can do that is by taking part in digs and then different types of digs. So there is a potential there. And of course, Newcastle University is nearby as well and have had digs. I mean, Rob Young, our professional archaeologist on this dig, he's cooperated with Newcastle University students a lot. Yeah, it's difficult. And of course, we're all getting older. It's one of the big problems with all community groups, not just in archaeology, basically, is that it's something that people don't have time for when they're working hard. It's only as their careers are running down, they get retired. People really have time for archaeology. It's presumably like metal detecting as well. It's, if you're going to do it, it's going to take days and days of your life to do it properly and get used to it and enjoy it. And people just don't have that time if they've got young families and careers. So people, join groups like ours as they're kind of in their 50s, getting into their 60s. The problem is by the time they're hitting 70 and beyond, their knees are knackered and their hips have gone. And then
the mind's willing, but the body.
Yes, there's no more use in the heavy work. So, archaeology is quite heavy work, and the phases of it that are nice, delicate troweling. But a lot of it is, mattock and shovel, and you need fit young people or youngish people to do it. And by the time you're mid-70s, most people are kind of slowing down.
So one question to finish. One question I always like to ask archaeologists, right? And I don't know, I'm going to answer myself. If you had a time, this tent was a time machine, and we could go back to any period in time for one day.
I'd like to go back to the Bronze Age, I think. I think the Iron Age, in a way, we can vaguely understand what goes through their minds. They're not that different from medieval peasants in many ways. The farming was similar. I know they had different beliefs and so on, but the Iron Age was recognisable. But I think going back a bit further into the Bronze Age, Chalcolithic, late Neolithic would be interesting just to see if you could understand what they believed and what their the things in their life, what was important. Wouldn't want to go to the Roman times.
So I don't think I've got, I keep thinking, I'd like to go then, but I think I'd like to go back just to see how the land laid. Yeah. How the, like Bishop Auckland, how was the land before the Roman thing. But brilliant.
I mean, and we know the landscape at the end of the Iron Age, probably here, Lower Teesdale, is probably not that different to how it is now, but you'd be interested to just go back to sort of 1500 BC and see what it was like then.
As you said before, you write up all of the thing. If you went back in time for 1 week and you got a good understanding and you wrote a book on this, do you think it would be accepted by...
I would hope so. I mean, what I think, if you think just one photograph of one Iron Age village would tell you just so much that you can't get from either archaeology or from the writings of the Romans or whatever.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I've learned quite a lot. I hope you will. So, good morning, Tony. Good morning. So, we're with Altogether Archaeology, a community-based archaeology group, and we're in...
We're half a mile from Cutherston.
Right. So,
we're nearer Cutherston than Runnelkirk.
Yeah.
It's a field difference.
I know Midland Teesdale rings a bell. So, Tony, the site that we're on, it's been proven to be a multi-period palisaded settlement.
Yes.
So, do you know when the initial period would have been?
Well, from the dating evidence that we've got so far, it goes back to 500 BC on the terraces. And we know that from carbon dating and oscillating light results done by the terrace team. And we've also got carbon dating as well. And then we started work here in 2019, having done a walkover and magnetometry and looking at the LiDAR. And we put a ditch in, a trench in, and we discovered a ditch which went 2.5 meters deep, which was the ditch for a palisade. And we did more magnetometry. We returned in 2021 because our dig was obviously stopped in 2020 when COVID arrived. But that was the year that the terrace team came because they were professionals from a European team and they worked here for a week with some of the committee helping them. And they did test pits on all the terraces and some test pits in some of the fields on the ridge and furrow as well, at the side of the terraces.
And that terrace, the terrace, would that have been for crops?
That would have been for crops, yes.
It's a south-facing terrace, isn't it?
Yes,
so it would have been for crops. It wasn't access.
No, it was built for crops.
Right.
And we have results that there was Emma there, which spelt is a derivative from Emma, and then wheat as well.
Emma would have been used for bread making, or?
But it would have been for food preparation, yes.
And the palisade, so you come to the terraces, you got this palisaded area. The palisade would have been defensive.
Well, it might have been defensive. It might have just been to keep the cattle in. It might have just been to keep the stock in.
Okay, so there's no indicator of how high the palisade...
We don't know.
It might have been various.
But clearly, we think that in the Roman period, the palisade might have well been taken down. And because there were lots and lots of paved areas. And some of the paved areas were over what was the palisade, as we discovered in the first trench that we done.
How do you establish a site? Because we're not in the middle of nowhere as such, but we are somewhere you wouldn't notice from the roadside. So I'm just curious how you identify a site to explore.
Well, this was initially identified with LiDAR. So we had the LiDAR techniques, and then
who initiated the LiDAR? Who was it yourselves? That
No. The LiDAR was done by the Environment Agency. Commissioned the LiDAR to see about floodplains initially, but the original LiDAR was done by the MOD.
So, what piqued your interest on the site? Why did you think, what's that there? What?
Well, we were interested with the the features around here. There's a more detailed version as well. And of course now people are doing LiDAR with drones as well.
It's amazing what happening is. So you found your site. You think, right, that needs further investigation. So what's the first steps?
The first step is to do a walkover. And we got our members in a line at the edge of the field, and we walked over very, very slowly. And if they saw any lumps and bumps that seemed to be interesting, we went to have a look. We recorded them on the LiDAR map that we had, just to confer, try and work out where things were. And then with the magnetometry, we then decided where we're going to put our trench. And
the magnetometry, it's kind of what you see on time theme, is it? Where the increments sort of...
Yes. We just walk across and the signals go down into the ground and then they get recorded on the computer.
Is that an expensive process? Because obviously you don't have the equipment at home, so you have to employ someone to do that.
We don't have the equipment, but we do borrow the equipment from the Swaledale and Archaeological group. They bought the equipment with a lottery grant, and we share that with them. We give them a donation, and some of their members come and do it. Well, actually, some of their members are our members as well, but we that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We use their equipment.
Just on your membership, I mean, they're all volunteers, aren't they?
Yes.
This is the Tales from the Trowel podcast.
Hello, Sue. Hello. So I'm here today at Gueswick with Sue Wilson, a member of the Altogether Archaeology team. So, Sue, can you tell me, why did you decide to join Altogether Archaeology? What was the reason behind that?
The main reason was to come digging. I live a bit too far out for the majority of the stuff that they do, but I do like digging, and there's not so many places where you can get to dig now, so I'm quite happy to join them and come up here.
So what's some of the benefits then of joining Altogether Archaeology?
Well, they do an awful lot apart from digging. They do walks and they have lots of lectures. But as I say, they're mainly too far away for me, but you can get them online. Yeah.
The Zooms?
The Zooms, yeah. Because they started doing those during COVID, and they still do a few online. So it's easy to keep in touch. And because some of the people that dig here I've dug with at other places, it gets to be like a community. So you get to know more and more people. And so you get to learn, meet new friends here. And then the next time you come, you remember them again.
This is the Tales from the Trowel podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have people who are qualified archaeologists. Some of them have master's degrees, PhDs, but we all just muck in.
What's the youngest member you have?
Well, the membership starts at 18, but we do have family membership where people are coming along at 10 and 12. But the youngsters have to be accompanied by responsible adults.
And is it quite a healthy membership?
We have 124 members.
That's pretty good.
It is.
I can imagine that's a logistical nightmare. Well, if you have a dig and everyone wants to turn up on the same day, parking.
Fortunately, a lot of them don't want to dig every day, can't dig every day because some of them are working. But it does, we try and restrict numbers on the site so that we can deal with the numbers, because it's no good having people coming if there's nothing for them to do. But we open up sites accordingly, but we don't open them up too big because we know that we have to finish the work. We're here for 3 weeks.
Right. Is that a time team do the 3-day thing, don't they? That's their gimmick. But sometimes it'll be different periods of time, depending on when the fields are available due to crops or...
Well, we're very, very fortunate that Alison and Stephen Lamb let us come whenever we want to come. We tell them where we're going to dig, and they actually come and cut the grass prior to us arriving. So it's less to dig, and they remove the stock as well.
And this has always been grass?
This has always been grass, farming records going back.
So just where we're situated here, we're on a very prominent hill.
Yeah, we are on
fantastic views.
It is very, very prominent, and on a fine day, not unlike today, you can see Goldsborough and Shacklesborough further up the valley, and they have rock art on them. And when you're on the top of Shacklesborough and Goldsborough, this stands out just as they do from here. So it's probably been a site that people have used, obviously.
It initially hadn't been like a signalling station where they would communicate across.
Yeah, could have been, yes. Yeah. As well have been.
That's fascinating. So the land we're on, obviously, the River Tees is just down from us.
It is.
But to me, it's a long way down from us. It might only be quarter of a mile, would you say?
No, it's less than that. Less than that. It's one field.
So they would need water up here. They would need a lot of water.
There is a spring up here.
There is a spring. Okay.
There is a spring.
Fantastic. So the site would have been used mainly, it'd have been a family settlement, or would it have been multiple?
There must have been a lot of people here to have had all of the people digging the palisaded ditches and all the other ditches that are here.
And the life of the site, we're spanning 1,000 years?
Well, we're spanning from, at the moment that we know of, sort of 500 BC up to 500 AD.
Why do you think that the site went out of use?
We don't know why it went out of use at all. We have no idea yet. Yeah, we just don't know why it went out of use.
Do you think would it have been a money economy in that period, or would it have been more trade?
Well, there must have been trade going on, because when the Romano-British period, we have food preparation pots here, which must have been traded, and we've got Roman spearhead here, but that could have belonged to a local who was in the Roman army. It could have just been one of the lads joining the Roman army.
Have you found, there has been quite, next to us on the table we have some lovely finds, which span Iron Age right away
through to 1st, 2nd century and into the 5th century.
And the most modern find that you've got, the metallic find, is the Pilgrim's Badge.
Yes.
But I can't get my head around how that comes to being on this site.
Well, we don't know whether there's been a religious settlement here or not later on in the medieval period. We don't know that yet.
And which deity does it portray? That is it St Edmund, was it?
The Pilgrim Badge is from Bury St Edmunds, yeah, St Edmunds.
Right.
And the badge portrays him being put to death by two archers. And it's a copper alloy badge, and it's the furthest north recorded.
Because you imagine people making pilgrimages to large church centres like Durham and Canterbury's and things. So someone might have been returning from that.
Yeah, but Bury St Edmunds was a prominent position at the time. There were a lot of royal meetings held there.
And there's no churches in the area that to bury like to St Edmund. Bronze, is it bronze or copper alloy?
It's copper alloy.
Bronze.
Copper alloy. There were a lot made of lead. There were a cheaper version.
And as for other finds, I noticed you've got the spear, which is really, really nice. So that was socketed.
And that's 180 AD.
180.
And there's one identical design to it found at South Shields.
So 180, so the Romans were already established in the north of England by this period. It's, on my basic knowledge of the Romans, you've got the A66 from Scotch Corner. That was classed as the Winter Road. Was that the Roman Winter Road?
There was a Roman settlement at Bowes.
Yeah.
Which is not far from here.
But just on the hillside over there at Eggleston, there's the Roman road that would have gone to Alston. So there would have been a Roman carriageway, if you like, passing. So there would have been Roman activity. So there would have been trade.
Oh, yes.
With not necessarily Romans, but with the Romano-British. So, and as for other finds, with some even predate the spear, there's some...
Well, we've got quernstones. We've got beehive quernstones, which were done in the Iron Age, right? And then we've got quernstones right up to the 1st, 2nd century, plus a medieval quernstone, which is on the promontory where we did the dig last autumn, where we found the pilgrim badge.
So this is something that you'd expect to find on a site like this. Would you expect the volume of quernstones, or does this seem more than you would have thought of?
Well, we've never worked on a site where we've found as many quernstones as this.
Does that lead you to any...
Well, it just means that the site's been in use, grinding grain, for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Do you think it's any indication of population numbers?
Well, yes. I mean, to have a lot of people to feed, all these cornerstones that were found, they must have been feeding a lot of people.
Is there any indication in the name of the site that would, that leads to its activity? Because Gueswick or Gueswick?
Gueswick, yeah.
Gueswick.
We don't know.
The WICK ending, does that indicate more Saxon or Viking?
Well, it does, but the names project that we're doing, they still haven't come up with firm results.
Right. I did read some of the Altogether PDF files on your website, which are brilliant, and there has been different spellings.
Yes.
Of it. Yeah. Is that just down to just literacy or local?
It can be literacy or just doing it how people pronounce it.
So you don't know where the name.
We don't know.
The guest bits we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, and we've been through all of the records for the estate, going back hundreds and hundreds of years. So they've given us all the information.
So would this have all been, because I know we're part of the Door Park estate here.
Yes.
Would this have been herds of deer and...
Well, there are still deer here.
Yeah.
Because one of the lads that's camping on the site sees deer, and when people come up early on in the morning, there's often deer up here. So they're still here.
But on the site, as we came on, you showed us that there is a circle of what have been post holes. So that's right at the beginning of its use, would that be?
As far as we know, for the information that we've got so far, every day brings up something new.
Yeah. And that's why you're here. That's why you get out of bed and you get here. So
if we knew all the answers, we'd just go to the pub.
And
there's a holiday.
This is your 4th year on the site?
It's the 4th year on the site.
And notwithstanding the COVID period. Yes. And do they tend to be the same people? Do they come back year after year?
Well, so the hardcore, the membership, yes. But we get new members every week.
And you're funding, obviously this is not a cheap thing to fund. I mean, a Portaloo, just to hire for 3 days, can be hundreds of pounds. So
yeah. We're lucky that we've built up quite a good resources with our membership fees and donations. But we do get funding to do our research this year from the Royal Archaeological Institute. They've given us money to pay for all our carbon dating last year. We've had funding from the Council of British Archaeology, Yorkshire, to do some of the pottery research, and their funding was backed by the Architectural and Archaeological Society of Northumberland and Durham. They gave us some funds as well.
Does political events, I don't want to say the B word, but to political events, do they affect you? Have things changed from, say, 2015? Without using the B word,
yes,
through to now. Has that affected you, or is it pretty much?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, all the groups are chasing the same pots of money. Now, we had money for 2 or 3 years from the Durham County Community Fund, but they said that they were going to then concentrate on food bank.
Yeah,
right.
So things like that, heating people's homes.
So you have to compete. So do you have to put forward a case for?
Yes.
For doing it.
The putting in the paperwork to apply for grants is quite a difficult thing to do. It takes a long time, and if you don't do it right, you don't stand a chance.
As people in the street, can you do that? Or do you have to employ solicitors or?
No, we do it.
Do it yourselves.
We do it. We're very, very lucky that we've got a lot of people who do it. It's a team effort to put it together.
Fantastic.
I draw it all together. It's my name that goes on the bottom when we send it in.
So if it goes wrong, you're equally to blame.
Yeah, but we do get help. I mean, we're lucky that because this is now, since the boundary chair, this is in County Durham, which historically, and all the local people still think of themselves as Yorkshire people. So that is why the Council of British Archaeology Yorkshire sponsors.
Yeah.
And we also... There's no such thing as a free lunch. So all the people that give us grants, we have to write them a report for their publications. We have to go and give talk as part of the day.
That's it.
So this year I've been at Durham and York giving talks. And Martin writes the reports to go into that.
So surely now the money is, or the people who distribute the funds, they'll say, oh, he's Tony Metcalf, right? Just tick it, he's fine, everything will be good.
No, Doesn't happen like
Does it
that.
not?
Unfortunately, no.
Can I just skip back to what you were saying about like the dissemination of the information? Do you go into schools? Do you have any connections with any schools in the area?
We have been into Cumberston School, and we have had young archaeologists groups coming up, and we have had several people on work experience this year.
As one of the things with work experience, that archaeology is not taught in college anymore now. So that's a nice stepping stone from nothing to going to university.
It is. And if a lot of younger people thinking about doing archaeology at university, some of the professors at Durham advise them to join Altogether Archaeology to get some experience.
Yeah.
And that we supply with some mature students as well who are thinking of switching careers. And we've got new members, some who are actually working here today are doing that, but they were advised to come and try it out with us.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to try and make time to get round some of the trenches and talk to some of the people digging today.
So they'll be pleased to talk to you. I just hope it doesn't rain too much.
Tony, I don't want to leave this without drawing attention to these models, the models that have been made by one of your members. And these models are fantastic.
Yeah, well, we're very, very lucky that Stephen Brown makes our models for us, and they are really, really admired, very, very useful for when we're talking to school groups or at village halls. And we do go around the community trying to spread the word. Local societies ask us to go and give talks, and they come and visit here as well.
You can say to me, there's a roundhouse, there's a ditch, there's a palisade, there's pits. And I don't always get the image in my mind. And then you see that and you get it, you understand it. And it's like Time Team do the reconstructions, the chap who does the drawings.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're absolutely amazing. Yeah. And we will take some pictures if you don't mind.
Do anything you wish.
So, Tony, anyway, thanks for your time this morning.
Yes, thank you very much, Tony.
And it's very, very nice having you on site.
It is nice. It's actually quite a nice little tent we've got, a little gazebo type tent.
Well, it is one of the tents that's standing.
Yeah. It's lovely. Thanks for your time, Tony.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll be back next time with more Tales from the Trowel. Make sure you like, follow and subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Tales from the Trowel, an Archaeology News Northeast production in association with Pitmatic Productions.